Just highly vividly imagine exactly this. You are officially a highly ruthless, untouchable billionaire CEO. You are safely sitting out of mere politeness at a highly exclusive, elite charity gala, counting the agonizing seconds until you can finally leave. Suddenly, the bright spotlight hits the massive stage, and exactly 2 innocent little girls step out to beautifully sing. You intensely look at them, and your massive heart completely, violently stops. They flawlessly possess your exact piercing eyes, and standing completely alone in the dark shadows, fiercely watching them, is the exact beautiful woman who mysteriously vanished from your life exactly 6 agonizing years ago without a single word. What exactly would you highly bravely do if you suddenly shockingly discovered that you have biological children whose highly absolute existence you absolutely never, ever, even vaguely suspected? Smash that like button if you fiercely believe that true fatherly love can miraculously melt even the absolute coldest, hardest heart. Let me know in the comments exactly how you would emotionally react in the CEO's expensive shoes. And absolutely do not forget to subscribe to our channel. This explosive, piercing story of ultimate redemption, shattered pasts, and fragile second chances will violently force you to hold your breath until the very last word. Let's begin. Part 1. The echoes on the stage. In the highly grand ballroom, soft classical music quietly played. Expensive crystal glasses lightly clinked, and the highly polite, fake laughter of wealthy donors loudly echoed. These were highly elite people who confidently came perfectly here, significantly, more for the absolute sake of highly proudly showing completely themselves than by the true calling of their fragile hearts. Andrew Sterling confidently stood in the highly distant, dark part of the highly enormous ballroom of the Waldorf Astoria in Manhattan, completely with an untouched glass of vintage champagne in his strong hand. He was absolutely already highly meticulously calculating exactly how incredibly soon he could highly possibly safely leave completely unnoticed. Such highly exclusive charity events rarely concerned true business. Most frequently, it was highly simply a pathetic, glittering show. He had highly generously donated, significantly more than absolutely anyone completely else in exactly this massive room. But he absolutely did not highly desperately need their pathetic praises or fake secular conversations. His dark blonde hair was highly impeccably styled. His highly bespoke, black designer suit sat completely flawlessly, and his piercing dark brown eyes scanned the massive room with a highly freezing, detached coldness. He was perfectly here, completely out of a strict sense of duty. Absolutely nothing, significantly more. He was absolutely already actively going to smoothly turn completely away from the massive stage and quietly slip completely out, exactly when the highly charismatic host confidently approached the active microphone and highly officially announced a highly special performance. Exactly 2 young, beautiful sisters absolutely will beautifully sing a highly touching song, the host stated, in highly pure support of the highly critical medical needs of innocent children. For Andrew, exactly this seamlessly passed miraculously, almost completely unnoticed. Highly simply boring background noise. But exactly when the bright beam of the spotlight heavily fell onto the massive stage, and exactly 2 tiny little girls confidently walked completely out, fiercely holding absolutely each other by the soft hands. Absolutely something completely inside him completely, violently shuddered. They absolutely could not be significantly older than exactly 6 young years. On them were highly identical, beautiful white dresses, and their long, soft waves of hair beautifully fell around their highly innocent faces. Their piercing eyes, incredibly warm, highly wide open, and so incredibly, achingly familiar, highly actively, seemed to completely, violently pierce him completely through when the beautiful music aggressively began to quietly play, and they aggressively began to beautifully sing. Andrew completely, violently, froze. Completely, 100% forgetting entirely about the absolute rest of the highly crowded room. The innocent girls highly successfully possessed a highly natural, beautiful harmony. Their highly innocent voices loudly sounded incredibly pure and incredibly sweet. Completely innocent, but incredibly strong. The highly elite crowd completely around him miraculously softened. Highly certain people absolutely even highly emotionally wiped hot tears. But Andrew highly possibly could highly intensely focus absolutely only on exactly one single thing. On their highly innocent faces, the highly precise shape of their piercing eyes, the highly exact tilt of the sharp chin, the highly specific way, exactly how exactly one of them incredibly slightly rhythmically tapped her tiny little foot perfectly to the beat. Absolutely everything. Exactly. This was completely, unmistakably tied completely to absolutely something. Or significantly more accurately, to absolutely someone, entirely in his highly toxic past. He incredibly, slightly heavily leaned completely forward, exactly as if highly frantically attempting to completely, violently shrink the highly massive distance perfectly, perfectly, between completely himself and the absolute truth, exactly which he absolutely had not completely accepted completely. And exactly then he vividly saw her, significantly aside, completely from the massive stage, confidently standing, completely alone, highly tightly, fiercely clasping her soft hands perfectly in front of completely herself. Confidently stood a beautiful woman with a highly familiar, proud posture and a beautiful face, exactly which he absolutely had not vividly seen for exactly 6 agonizing years. Her beautiful hair was exactly now significantly longer, significantly darker. The beautiful expression on her beautiful face significantly more highly exhausted. But he absolutely would have highly flawlessly recognized her absolutely anywhere in the entire massive world. Chloe, the beautiful woman who had completely, violently disappeared, completely from his beautiful life, completely without highly polite warnings, and completely without highly logical explanations. The beautiful woman who exactly once explicitly meant completely to him, absolutely everything. His highly brilliant brain, highly frantically attempted, entirely to highly logically piece, completely back, completely together, exactly which he vividly saw. But his fragile body was absolutely already highly aggressively reacting. His massive heart violently pounded. To him, highly tragically lacked heavy air. The innocent girls beautifully singing perfectly on the massive stage, exactly like highly tiny little stars, absolutely were not highly simply performing artists. They absolutely were her biological children. And exactly if his highly primal instincts absolutely were completely, 100% correct, exactly if the highly undeniable echoes of his absolute own highly distinct features perfectly on their highly innocent faces explicitly meant absolutely anything, They absolutely were his biological children completely too. He absolutely did not highly patiently wait for the highly loud applause. Exactly as incredibly soon, exactly as loudly sounded the absolute last highly beautiful note, and the highly grand hall completely, violently exploded completely with highly deafening ovations. He smoothly turned completely around and highly rapidly exited completely out of the highly massive ballroom. His highly chaotic thoughts wildly raced completely at a highly breakneck gallop. His fragile stomach violently twisted completely into a highly tight knot. The highly toxic past exactly which, exactly as he highly genuinely thought, was completely, permanently buried, had literally just confidently stepped completely out onto the massive stage and intensely looked completely straight directly into his piercing eyes. And absolutely nothing. Entirely in his highly glamorous life, absolutely no highly lucrative deals, absolutely no highly prestigious titles, absolutely no highly massive empire could highly possibly highly successfully prepare him entirely to exactly this highly explosive moment. Interactive question. Andrew just realized the two girls singing on stage are his daughters. How do you think Chloe will react when he confronts her? Drop your fierce predictions below. Part 2. The confrontation in the shadows. Andrew safely remained confidently standing completely alone, entirely in the highly quiet corridor, perfectly right, perfectly outside the highly massive ballroom. His highly rapid pulse absolutely still, violently, frantically beat. He heavily leaned completely with his strong hands, completely against the highly polished marble beverage table. Highly frantically actively attempting entirely to highly miraculously come completely to completely himself entirely, while the highly massive realization highly stubbornly continued entirely to violently roll completely over him, completely, with highly crushing, massive waves. Exactly, these innocent girls absolutely did not highly simply visually look exactly like him. They absolutely were him. The highly flawless reflection of his highly distinct features entirely in a significantly smaller, significantly brighter, significantly more, highly innocent, beautiful form. And Chloe, her highly quiet presence, highly undeniably, confirmed absolutely everything. He absolutely had not vividly seen her completely since exactly that highly exact same specific dark week, exactly as she confidently left. In exactly that highly agonizing week, she completely, violently, tore completely apart their highly passionate relationship completely, without absolutely any highly logical reason, completely without exactly one single heavy word. Absolutely no highly urgent calls, absolutely no highly desperate messages, absolutely no highly therapeutic closure. In exactly one highly fine bright day, she highly simply, completely, violently, disappeared completely out of his beautiful life, and entirely in spite of absolutely all his highly massive influence and highly elite connections, she had safely remained completely, utterly hidden. And exactly now, highly suddenly, she was perfectly here. And she absolutely was not completely alone. For exactly one highly brief moment, he highly deeply thought entirely about exactly the highly absolute fact, entirely, to safely leave. Exactly. So exactly, it absolutely would be significantly easier, significantly cleaner, but absolutely something completely inside him violently rebelled. His absolute entire beautiful life he had highly cowardly, walked completely away, completely from highly emotional complexities, highly miraculously transforming. Highly complex emotions completely into highly cold logic, and highly massive pain completely into highly dead silence. But absolutely not entirely in exactly this highly specific time. He absolutely could not frantically run completely away, completely from exactly that, exactly which he had vividly seen perfectly on exactly that massive stage. He absolutely did not, absolutely even highly fiercely want to. Completely without highly pathetic hesitation, he confidently headed completely back directly to the heavy doors of the highly massive ballroom and aggressively began to highly patiently wait perfectly outside, highly securely. Hidden entirely in the dark shadows, completely until the highly dense crowd significantly thinned completely out, and the innocent girls completely, violently, disappeared completely behind the highly dark curtains. Several agonizing minutes significantly later, he vividly saw exactly how she confidentially appeared, highly gently leading the innocent girls directly to the highly grand exit, highly protectively placing completely by exactly one highly protective soft hand, perfectly on absolutely each entirely of their highly tiny little backs. Chloe was significantly thinner than he intimately remembered. Her beautiful face was highly tragically sunken, and she smoothly moved completely with a highly quiet, desperate haste. Exactly so highly usually smoothly moved genuine people who had highly agonizingly lived way too incredibly long, entirely in a highly desperate mode of pure survival. But entirely in her perfectly there, absolutely, still safely remained exactly that, highly exact same beautiful grace, exactly that highly quiet strength, exactly which absolute first, highly magnetically attracted him completely to her agonizing years, completely ago. When she confidently approached significantly closer, he vividly saw exactly how she completely, violently, froze entirely. In exactly that highly explosive moment, exactly when their piercing eyes completely, violently met. The innocent girls absolutely did not highly astutely notice exactly this. They violently ran completely forward, highly happily chattering completely with absolutely each other entirely about highly delicious cookies and highly bright sparkles. Chloe absolutely did not highly immediately aggressively begin entirely to actively speak. Her highly soft lips incredibly slightly parted, exactly, as if perfectly at her completely, violently caught the heavy breath, and her piercing eyes completely, violently, widened completely from highly profound disbelief. Andrew incredibly, slowly, confidently, approached directly to her, completely until perfectly right. Perfectly. Between them safely remained, absolutely. Only a highly mere couple of short steps. For exactly one highly brief moment, they highly simply intensely looked completely directly, entirely at absolutely each other. The heavy air perfectly right perfectly between them was so incredibly highly thick exactly that absolutely neither absolutely could actively breathe. "You confidently left," he stated. His deep voice was incredibly low and completely controlled, but incredibly slightly violently trembled. "You completely violently disappeared completely without exactly one single heavy word. And right exactly now, I highly shockingly find you perfectly here, completely with them." He absolutely did not intensely look entirely in the highly direct direction of the innocent girls. He absolutely could not. Exactly this absolutely would have completely violently broken him. Chloe heavily swallowed incredibly hard. I absolutely did not highly genuinely think exactly that I would absolutely ever completely again vividly see you. Her beautiful voice was incredibly soft, but incredibly firm. I honestly did not completely know exactly how entirely to highly honestly explicitly tell you. They absolutely are mine. Exactly these heavy words highly actively seemed completely alien, entirely in his handsome mouth. Exactly as if they highly officially belonged completely to absolutely someone completely else. She slowly looked completely down. Yes, the highly blunt answer absolutely did not highly shockingly shock him. It highly, massively intensified the highly severe pain entirely in his fragile chest. Why exactly didn't you highly honestly explicitly tell me, Chloe? Why exactly did you highly maliciously hide them completely from me? Her piercing eyes completely, violently, filled completely with a highly complex mixture of highly profound sadness and highly toxic guilt. Because you absolutely were highly miraculously building a highly massive empire, Andrew, you had literally just highly successfully closed your absolute biggest, highly massive acquisition. You brutally worked exactly 20 agonizing hours entirely per massive day. You highly honestly explicitly told me exactly that, entirely in your beautiful life perfectly. There absolutely is no highly viable space entirely for absolutely anything completely else. I highly blindly believed you. She violently paused. I was completely terrified. I absolutely did not highly fiercely want to absolutely be exactly that pathetic one who would completely, violently distract you or completely, violently destroy exactly that entirely for the absolute sake of exactly which you so incredibly brutally worked. Andrew incredibly slowly, highly gently, shook his handsome head. His deep voice completely, violently broke. You absolutely did not completely violently destroy absolutely anything. You highly ruthlessly took completely away absolutely everything. Chloe confidently took a highly tiny microscopic step completely forward. Her beautiful voice was incredibly quiet, but incredibly clear. Exactly one, entirely of them. Daisy, or Dasha. She is highly severely sick. She highly desperately needs a highly urgent surgery. Exactly this is officially exactly why we absolutely were perfectly here exactly tonight. To highly desperately attempt entirely to highly successfully collect exactly highly sufficiently enough massive money entirely to highly miraculously help her. I highly exhaustedly tried absolutely everything, completely else. He intensely looked completely directly, entirely at her. Entirely, in highly stunned, dead silence. A highly massive 1,000 pure emotions violently rushed completely through him. Pure anger, massive regret, highly absolute helplessness, but completely under absolutely all. Exactly this highly secretly lurked absolutely something significantly more highly powerful, highly absolute resolution. Where exactly absolutely are you highly actively staying? He asked. She violently hesitated. At a highly loyal friend's place, perfectly nearby. I highly fiercely want to vividly see them, he stated. I highly fiercely want to explicitly know them. Chloe incredibly slowly, fiercely nodded. Highly acceptable, but absolutely do not highly aggressively rush highly delicate events. They profoundly know completely, 100% nothing. He intensely looked completely directly at the heavy door, completely behind exactly which had completely disappeared the innocent girls. Then exactly it has highly officially come the highly perfect time, entirely for them, entirely, to explicitly know. Interactive question. Andrew just found out his daughter needs a life-saving surgery. Do you think he will be able to save her in time? Tell us below. Part 3. The secret handshake. Chloe highly silently led Andrew completely along the highly quiet residential street, exactly that. Confidently went completely away, completely from the highly bright city glow of Brooklyn. The crisp air was incredibly cool and completely still. They confidently walked completely silently. The highly sharp sound of their expensive shoes completely against the hard asphalt was officially the absolute only highly audible rhythm, perfectly. Right perfectly between them. Every highly few short steps, Chloe highly anxiously looked completely over her fragile shoulder, entirely to highly aggressively. Ensure exactly that the innocent girls absolutely were absolutely still, confidently walking completely ahead. Highly happily bouncing and loudly laughing. Completely, 100% unaware. Entirely about the highly massive tension, confidently walking completely following completely behind. Initially, Andrew highly confidently kept perfectly on a highly safe distance, completely uncertain. Entirely in exactly that. Exactly which, completely to him, was highly generously permitted. Entirely to profoundly feel, absolutely not actively speaking absolutely. Already entirely about exactly the highly absolute fact, entirely to actively say, absolutely, anything. His highly brilliant thoughts wildly raced completely at a highly breakneck gallop. Complex questions, highly painful memories, and highly profound emotions. Exactly which absolutely had not highly actively surfaced entirely for agonizing years. To vividly see Chloe completely anew was officially exactly like completely, violently ripping, completely open a highly buried time capsule. Exactly that had absolutely been highly deeply buried, way too incredibly deep. To vividly see the innocent girls, his biological daughters, was officially exactly like highly unexpectedly. Meeting a highly bright future, exactly which, exactly as completely to him, absolutely never, ever, highly honestly, explicitly told, highly legally belonged, completely to him. They confidently approached directly to a highly modest, small house, safely hidden, completely behind a highly dense row of highly tall bushes. It absolutely was not highly luxurious, but exactly it visually looked incredibly lived in and highly meticulously maintained. Chloe smoothly opened the heavy front door and highly safely let the innocent girls completely inside. Confidently, "Go highly rigorously wash your soft hands," she loudly screamed completely after them. "We absolutely will highly happily drink hot tea completely before deep sleep." The innocent girls violently ran completely away. Their highly pure giggling completely, violently faded entirely in the highly narrow corridor. Exactly this highly innocent sound was officially entirely for Andrew, highly actively similar, completely to highly beautiful music, and highly loud. Thunder completely, 100% simultaneously. incredibly sweet, and completely, utterly deafening. Chloe safely remained confidently standing entirely in the highly small hallway, highly patiently waiting completely until he confidently enters. He violently lingered perfectly on the highly polished threshold, exactly as if highly terrifyingly fearing. Exactly that completely, violently. Crossing exactly it, he absolutely would, highly miraculously, make absolutely all. Exactly this, completely permanent, but he confidently stepped completely forward. Inside, the highly modest house was incredibly warm, incredibly quiet, and completely, 100% full, entirely of highly undeniable traces, entirely of exactly that beautiful life, exactly which he had completely, violently missed. Highly tiny little shoes, perfectly by the heavy door. Highly colorful drawings perfectly on the highly cold refrigerator. A highly half-assembled complex puzzle perfectly on the highly cheap coffee table. Absolutely all. Exactly. This was so incredibly intimate, so incredibly familiar, and completely alien completely, 100% simultaneously. Chloe highly politely offered completely to him hot tea, but he highly gently shook his handsome head. He absolutely did not, highly fiercely want to highly pathetically pretend exactly that. Exactly, this is completely normal. When exactly did you highly shockingly discover exactly that Daisy is highly severely sick? He asked, completely, violently, breaking the highly dead silence. She heavily leaned completely against the highly wooden doorframe, entirely in the highly cozy kitchen. Approximately exactly 1 agonizing year, completely ago. Absolutely everything aggressively began, completely with highly severe shortness of breath, highly massive fatigue. We confidently went directly to the highly elite cardiologist. Exactly this is officially a highly severe congenital heart defect. Highly fixable, but incredibly expensive. Exactly such a highly complex surgery. Highly strictly requires a highly elite specialist and a highly incredibly long, massive rehabilitation. She slowly looked completely down, directly at her soft hands. I absolutely could not, highly possibly affordably allow completely myself exactly this. The highly exclusive fundraiser exactly today was officially the absolute last, highly desperate attempt. He profoundly felt exactly how absolutely something completely inside his fragile chest, completely, violently, shifted. A highly slowly building massive pressure completely to exactly which, perfectly, there absolutely was no highly viable place entirely to confidently go. Why exactly? Then absolutely didn't you highly urgently call me? Absolutely not entirely about us. Absolutely only entirely about her. You highly perfectly profoundly knew exactly that I absolutely would, highly miraculously, help. I absolutely did not completely know exactly this, she honestly admitted. I absolutely did not completely know exactly what you absolutely would highly actively say, completely after absolutely all. Exactly this massive time. After absolutely everything exactly, that I absolutely did not, highly honestly, explicitly tell. Andrew smoothly turned completely away, confidently walking completely along the highly narrow corridor. His strong fingers highly gently touched the highly sharp edge entirely of a highly framed drawing. Exactly 3 highly simple stick figures and a highly colorful rainbow. His highly famous name, absolutely, was not perfectly there. Absolutely, of course it absolutely, was not. He absolutely was not a highly beautiful part. Entirely of exactly this highly epic story completely until right exactly now. Do they explicitly know entirely about me? He asked. No, incredibly quietly replied Chloe. They explicitly know exactly that perfectly. At them perfectly, there absolutely is a true father, but absolutely do not completely know exactly who. I absolutely did not highly maliciously lie. I highly carefully omitted the highly complex details. I absolutely did not highly fiercely want to highly maliciously clutter their highly innocent heads completely with a massive man who highly possibly might absolutely not safely return. Andrew highly tightly clenched his sharp jaws. Exactly now I absolutely will not confidently go absolutely anywhere. Chloe absolutely did not beautifully smile. I highly fiercely want to highly blindly believe entirely in exactly this. In exactly this highly specific moment, the innocent girls safely returned completely back, directly into the massive room. Exactly now absolutely already, flawlessly wearing highly identical, cozy pajamas, completely with highly tiny yellow stars. Daisy gracefully climbed completely onto the comfortable sofa, completely with a highly colorful picture book, while Alyssa, or Alina, completely without highly pathetic hesitation, confidently approached directly to Andrew. You absolutely were perfectly on our highly exclusive concert, she stated exactly as highly absolute fact. I vividly saw exactly how you intensely looked completely directly entirely at us. He gracefully sank completely onto her highly precise level. Yes, I absolutely was perfectly there. You absolutely both beautifully sang completely, 100% wonderfully. She highly meticulously measured him completely with a highly squinting, piercing gaze. Incredibly curious. Miraculously almost highly suspicious. Are you officially the highly loyal friend entirely of loving mama? He violently hesitated. Completely behind them, Chloe completely, violently held her heavy breath. I highly sincerely hope exactly that I absolutely will be highly successfully capable, entirely, to absolutely be absolutely also your highly loyal friend completely too, he incredibly cautiously stated. Alyssa highly deeply pondered exactly this. Highly acceptable, but completely to you, absolutely will highly agonizingly have entirely to highly flawlessly learn the highly secret complex handshake. And absolutely first, you absolutely must highly successfully please Daisy. He highly, truly, genuinely, beautifully smiled. Absolutely something incredibly soft and completely unfamiliar, confidentially appeared perfectly on his handsome face. It's a highly absolute deal. Later, completely after hot tea, highly entertaining fairy tales. Completely before deep sleep, and a highly reluctant, warm goodbye. Andrew confidently stood entirely in the highly quiet corridor, perfectly right, perfectly outside the highly cozy room, entirely of the innocent girls. Highly intently listening completely to their incredibly slow, highly even, deep breathing. Daisy highly tightly squeezed a highly fluffy plush bear. The soft arm of Alyssa highly carelessly hung completely from the comfortable bed. He smoothly turned directly toward Chloe, who confidently stood perfectly. Right, perfectly. Next, completely to him, fiercely crossing her fragile arms perfectly on her fragile chest. Completely, 100% word exactly as highly possibly. Can absolutely be incredibly tired. Absolutely, only highly devoted mothers. You highly beautifully raised them incredibly well, he stated. I highly desperately tried completely out of absolutely all my highly massive strength, she replied. You absolutely should not have highly agonizingly done exactly this completely, 100% alone. She intensely looked completely directly entirely at him, absolutely not completely knowing exactly what entirely to actively say. I absolutely cannot highly miraculously change the highly toxic past, he stated. But I highly fiercely want to absolutely be a highly beautiful part entirely of their highly bright future. Whatever exactly it highly possibly might visually look exactly like, and entirely for the absolute first time, entirely, in exactly this highly explosive evening. Chloe absolutely did not highly smoothly pull completely away. She highly simply fiercely nodded. Then highly bravely start completely from exactly the highly absolute fact entirely to absolutely be perfectly here, exactly tomorrow. And he profoundly knew exactly that he absolutely will. Interactive question. Andrew promised to stay for his daughters. Do you think Daisy's heart condition will get worse before he can help? Tell us your thoughts below. Part 4. The $20 billion sacrifice. The absolute next highly bright morning confidentially arrived incredibly softly. Bright sunlight beautifully poured completely through the highly sheer curtains, beautifully painting the highly cozy living room entirely in highly warm gold. Andrew miraculously, almost absolutely, did not peacefully sleep. Having highly agonizingly spent the highly massive bulk entirely of the highly dark night perfectly on the highly small, uncomfortable pull-out sofa entirely in the highly modest guest room, entirely of Chloe. Intensely staring, completely directly into the highly stained ceiling, entirely, while his highly brilliant thoughts absolutely did not highly generously give him highly absolute peace. For the absolute first time entirely in his entire massive life, he profoundly felt completely himself. Exactly like a highly complete alien, entirely in a beautiful world, completely, to exactly which he highly desperately, fiercely, wanted to highly beautifully belong. When he finally confidently stood completely up, the highly modest house was absolutely, already, completely awake. From the highly cozy kitchen loudly sounded highly pure laughter, and absolutely also the highly delicious smell, entirely of highly sweet pancakes, and absolutely something incredibly sweet. Highly possibly, highly sweet, syrup or highly spicy cinnamon. He confidently went completely onto the highly beautiful sound, and vividly saw Chloe, highly efficiently flipping highly delicious pancakes, completely with exactly one soft arm, entirely, while Alyssa safely sat perfectly behind the highly small table and highly enthusiastically colored, and Daisy confidently stood perfectly, right perfectly, next completely to her loving mother, completely with highly profound seriousness, highly intently watching, completely after the highly hot frying pan. Exactly this visually looked incredibly effortless, incredibly natural. A beautiful life, completely with a highly normal routine, a highly beautiful part, entirely of exactly which he had absolutely never, ever officially done, but exactly as incredibly soon. Exactly as Alyssa vividly saw him, her piercing eyes brilliantly lit completely up, and she completely, violently jumped completely, down completely from the comfortable chair. "You safely returned completely back!" she loudly screamed, violently running and highly tightly hugging him completely by his strong legs. Andrew smoothly leaned completely down, completely, 100% simultaneously completely surprised, and highly profoundly grateful. "Absolutely. Of course I safely returned completely back," he stated, highly gently stroking her perfectly on her beautiful hair. "I highly solemnly promised." Daisy intensely looked completely directly entirely at him. Significantly quieter. Significantly more highly hesitant. Her piercing gaze violently lingered perfectly on him, exactly, as if she highly frantically attempted entirely to highly logically understand exactly where is officially his highly proper place. Chloe highly smoothly handed completely to her the highly simple spatula, and confidently approached entirely to confidently stand perfectly. Right perfectly. Next, completely to him. She incredibly slower aggressively begins entirely to highly blindly trust. She stated entirely in highly, half a beautiful voice. Absolutely always, exactly such officially was. Andrew fiercely nodded. She absolutely does not highly obligatorily have entirely to highly blindly trust me right exactly now. She highly simply highly desperately needs entirely to vividly see exactly that I absolutely will not confidently leave. He highly enthusiastically helped entirely to highly beautifully set the highly small table, and they absolutely all safely sat completely down entirely to highly happily eat highly delicious breakfast. Initially, exactly. It was incredibly awkward. Andrew absolutely still, honestly did not completely know exactly how, entirely, to highly properly behave, completely himself, entirely. In exactly this highly beautiful brand new space. But the innocent girls, it highly actively seemed, exactly this completely, 100%. Absolutely did not highly actively worry. Alyssa highly relentlessly chattered completely between highly delicious bites, entirely of highly sweet pancakes, entirely about the highly busy school, highly entertaining cartoons, and a highly loyal girlfriend, perfectly at exactly whom perfectly, there absolutely is a highly cute pet lizard. Daisy actively spoke significantly less, but Andrew highly astutely noticed exactly how she highly intently watches completely after absolutely everything. Highly especially, completely after him. She highly meticulously studied, highly carefully evaluated, highly frantically attempting entirely to highly logically understand exactly who he officially is, and exactly why he highly suddenly, perfectly here, highly shockingly appeared. After highly delicious breakfast, the innocent girls confidently went entirely to highly neatly, dress entirely, while Chloe highly efficiently washed the highly dirty dishes. Andrew highly silently wiped the highly clean plates perfectly, right perfectly. Next, completely to her. They absolutely both highly astutely realized the highly strange, beautiful rhythm completely into exactly which they aggressively began entirely to highly smoothly merge. When she finally aggressively began entirely to actively speak, her beautiful voice was incredibly quiet, but incredibly confident. Are you highly truly, genuinely, actively going entirely to highly bravely stay? He fiercely nodded. Yes. How exactly incredibly long? Exactly so incredibly long, exactly as they absolutely will highly generously permit me. Exactly as incredibly long, exactly as you absolutely will highly generously permit? She absolutely did not actively answer completely immediately. I absolutely am not highly intimately accustomed completely to highly massive help. I so incredibly, highly long was completely with them, completely, 100% alone. Exactly, it is incredibly difficult entirely to highly safely let absolutely someone completely in. I absolutely do not highly fiercely want to highly ruthlessly take completely away. Absolutely nothing. Completely out. Entirely of exactly that. Exactly which you had highly miraculously built, he stated, highly smoothly. Placing a highly clean plate perfectly on the highly clean countertop. I highly simply, highly fiercely want to absolutely be a highly beautiful part entirely of exactly this. Exactly, the absolute rest entirely of the highly beautiful day they highly happily spent completely together. A highly unique, beautiful test entirely for absolutely something highly strongly reminding a highly beautiful family. Andrew highly happily joined completely to the innocent girls, entirely in a highly entertaining game. Absolutely some highly complex combination. Entirely of highly bravely saving a highly beautiful princess and a highly dangerous space mission. And highly shockingly caught completely himself. Perfectly on exactly the highly absolute fact, exactly that he loudly laughs, highly, truly, genuinely, loudly laughs. Exactly, so exactly as exactly. This highly actively seemed completely to him, completely alien in a highly incredibly long, massive time, completely ago, completely forgotten. When Daisy highly accidentally violently bumped completely into him, and he highly safely caught her, she absolutely did not highly smoothly pull completely away. She intensely looked completely directly entirely at him, completely from highly down, completely up, and incredibly quietly stated, "You absolutely absolutely do not highly actively seem a highly complete stranger." From exactly these heavy words, perfectly at him completely, violently, clenched the fragile heart. He absolutely, more absolutely, never, ever highly fiercely wanted to absolutely be a highly complete stranger. In exactly that highly dark evening, completely after, exactly the highly absolute fact, exactly how the innocent girls absolutely were highly lovingly put directly to comfortable beds. Andrew confidently stood entirely in the heavy doorway, highly intently watching exactly how they peacefully sleep. Chloe confidently approached and confidently stood perfectly completely to him, fiercely crossing her fragile arms perfectly on her fragile chest, perfectly at them absolutely never, ever absolutely anyone, perfectly here, absolutely more, absolutely did not highly actively happen, she stated. Highly, truly, genuinely, absolutely no one who absolutely would highly, bravely stay. He intensely looked completely directly entirely at her. His deep voice was literally barely significantly louder than a highly soft whisper. "I am highly bravely staying." She intensely looked completely directly, entirely at him. Completely from highly down. Completely up. Absolutely not completely, 100% convinced. But absolutely also, absolutely not, highly aggressively, pushing him completely away. And entirely for the absolute first time, he profoundly felt exactly that he absolutely is not, highly pathetically, borrowing absolutely someone's completely alien beautiful life. He profoundly felt exactly that he aggressively begins his absolute own. But exactly on the absolute next highly bright day, absolute hell completely, violently, broke completely loose. Andrew was actively entirely in the absolute middle, entirely of the absolute most highly important, massive negotiations, entirely in his entire massive career. He highly frantically attempted entirely to highly successfully execute a highly hostile takeover, entirely of a highly massive logistics firm, completely with highly massive headquarters, entirely in massive Chicago. The highly massive deal was highly officially valued, completely at significantly more than $20 billion. He safely sat entirely in a highly massive conference room, completely with highly clear glass walls, highly heavily surrounded, completely by highly elite lawyers and highly powerful executives, highly meticulously, finalizing the highly complex terms entirely of the highly massive buyout. The highly massive tension entirely in the massive room was completely palpable. Highly massive billions, entirely of dollars, highly perilously hung completely from his absolute, next highly carefully spoken phrase. His highly private mobile phone violently vibrated entirely in his deep pocket. He completely ignored exactly it. It violently vibrated completely anew, and completely anew, highly angrily. Frowning, Andrew highly smoothly raised his strong hand, highly authoritatively, forcing entirely to completely, violently, silence the highly powerful chief negotiator, completely from the highly massive Chicago firm. He smoothly took completely out the expensive phone. It was officially Chloe. "I highly profusely apologize," stated Andrew, highly abruptly, confidently standing completely up. He confidently exited completely out entirely of the highly massive conference room and highly urgently answered, "Chloe, is absolutely everything completely perfectly fine?" "Andrew!" she loudly sobbed. The highly terrifying sound entirely of her highly pure panic completely, violently, shot a highly massive charge entirely of highly pure, unadulterated adrenaline, completely straight, directly into his massive heart. Exactly. This is officially Daisy. Perfectly at her highly severe temperature, exactly 104 degrees. She is completely lethargic. She literally barely highly successfully breathes. I'm actively entirely in the highly rapid ambulance. We are confidently going directly to Mount Sinai Children's Hospital. He absolutely did not highly annoyingly ask highly complex questions. He absolutely did not violently hesitate. I am confidently going. I absolutely will be perfectly there significantly earlier than you. He completely hung up, smoothly turned completely around, and confidently entered completely back directly into the highly massive conference room. He highly aggressively grabbed his highly expensive coat completely from the highly soft back, entirely of the comfortable chair. "Mr. Sterling," asked the highly powerful chief negotiator, visually looking completely, utterly bewildered. "Where exactly are you highly actively going? Complete to us, highly absolutely remains, exactly a highly couple, entirely of short minutes, completely until the highly official signing. The highly massive deal is completely, violently cancelled," highly categorically stated Andrew. "Absolutely not, absolutely even intensely," looking completely directly, entirely at the massive man. He intensely looked completely directly at his highly elite team. Highly aggressively postpone exactly this. If they absolutely do not, highly fiercely, want to highly patiently, wait completely until highly anticipated, highly generously let them confidently leave. "Andrew, You absolutely cannot highly possibly actively speak completely seriously," loudly gasped exactly one entirely of his highly senior vice presidents. Exactly this is officially a highly massive takeover entirely on $20 billion. My biological daughter is actively, entirely in the highly sterile hospital, violently barked Andrew. His piercing eyes violently flashed completely with a highly terrifying, protective, pure ferocity. I absolutely do not give a single pathetic damn absolutely even. Exactly, if exactly, this massive building completely, violently, burns completely down, completely to the highly cold ground entirely, while perfectly at me, perfectly. There, absolutely is no me. Absolutely do not highly urgently call me. He violently ran directly to the highly secure elevator, his massive heart violently pounding entirely in his dry throat. Interactive question. Andrew just threw away a $20 billion deal for his daughter. Do you think he will make it to the hospital in time to save her? Drop your fierce thoughts below. Part 5. The final heartbeat. When Andrew violently burst completely through the highly automatic sliding doors entirely of the highly sterile emergency department at Mount Sinai, he was completely, 100% beside, completely, himself. He confidently bypassed the highly strict registration desk, completely ignoring the highly loud protests entirely of the highly massive security guards. His piercing eyes highly frantically scanned the highly chaotic massive room completely until he highly successfully found her. Chloe safely sat perfectly on a highly cheap plastic chair, perfectly near the highly strict resuscitation room, highly desperately closing her beautiful face completely with her soft hands, and highly, strongly, violently trembling. Alyssa safely sat perfectly, right, perfectly, next completely to her, fiercely squeezing entirely in her soft hands, a highly fluffy plush bear, and visually looking completely terrified. Andrew heavily dropped completely onto his strong knees perfectly in front, entirely of her. Chloe. She slowly looked completely up, incredibly red and highly swollen piercing eyes. They highly urgently took her completely away. They highly toxically think exactly that. Exactly. This is officially a highly severe respiratory infection complicating her heart condition. The highly severe temperature absolutely does not completely, violently drop. Andrew, she is so incredibly highly small. Completely without highly deeply thinking, Andrew highly passionately pulled her directly to completely himself. For the absolute first time entirely in exactly 6 agonizing years, she absolutely did not completely, violently tense. She highly tightly pressed completely against his broad chest, highly desperately burying her beautiful face completely into his strong neck, highly desperately violently sobbing. He highly tightly hugged her. And Alyssa highly passionately pulling his beautiful family directly into a highly strong, fiercely protective, pure embrace. She is officially a highly strong sterling, fiercely whispered Andrew, directly into her beautiful hair. And his absolute own hot tears finally violently rolled completely down. She is incredibly strong, completely with her. Absolutely everything absolutely will be completely perfectly fine. I am perfectly right, exactly here. I absolutely will not confidently go absolutely anywhere. They peacefully sat entirely in exactly this highly sterile waiting room. Exactly 6 excruciating, agonizing hours. Andrew fiercely held Chloe completely by the soft hand. Absolutely all. Exactly this highly precious time. He absolutely not, absolutely even exactly one single time, highly efficiently checked his expensive phone. He absolutely did not highly deeply think entirely about the highly massive logistics firm, about the highly massive $20 billion deal, or entirely about the highly elite board of directors. He highly deeply thought absolutely only entirely about the beautiful woman, perfectly right, perfectly next, completely to him, and entirely about the highly innocent little girl, highly agonizingly, fighting completely with a highly severe fever perfectly on the absolute other, highly distant side, entirely of the hard wall, shortly, completely. Before exact midnight, finally, confidently exited the highly respected doctor, visually looking completely exhausted, but beautifully smiling. The highly severe temperature completely, violently dropped, highly officially announced the highly respected doctor. It was officially a highly severe viral pneumonia, but we highly successfully stabilized her completely with the highly elite help entirely of highly critical oxygen and highly potent IV drips. Her heart is holding up well. She peacefully sleeps. You highly possibly can confidently go directly to her. The highly massive relief, exactly that completely, violently overwhelmed them, was completely, 100%, absolute. Chloe heavily exhaled exactly as if she had absolutely been highly agonizingly holding her heavy breath entirely for agonizing decades. She smoothly turned directly toward Andrew. Her piercing eyes highly intently searched his handsome face. She vividly saw highly visible tracks completely from hot tears, perfectly on his handsome cheeks. The highly complete disarray, entirely of his highly usual perfect hairstyle, the highly unfiltered, pure love and highly absolute terror entirely in his piercing icy blue eyes. In exactly that highly specific moment, she completely, profoundly understood exactly that the highly ruthless, cold billionaire who had highly ruthlessly thrown her completely out, exactly 6 agonizing years, completely ago, was highly, truly, genuinely, completely dead. The exact true man safely, sitting perfectly, right perfectly next completely to her, was highly simply a true father, completely in highly absolute terror, entirely for his biological child, and a highly devoted husband, highly desperately, fiercely wanting entirely to highly aggressively protect his highly devoted wife. Later exactly, that highly dark night, exactly when they confidently stood highly comfortably side by side, entirely in the highly dimly lit, pediatric intensive care, highly intently watching, exactly how Daisy highly tightly sleeps completely with a highly tiny oxygen cannula completely under her small nose. Chloe heavily leaned completely by her beautiful head, completely against the broad shoulder entirely of Andrew. You highly carelessly abandoned the highly massive buyout meeting, incredibly quietly stated she. Exactly this absolutely was not a highly pathetic question. Completely. During the highly agonizing waiting, highly urgent news, entirely about exactly this, absolutely were perfectly in, absolutely all highly urgent alerts, perfectly on her expensive phone. The highly elite financial networks highly loudly say exactly that you highly carelessly refused completely from $20 billion. Andrew highly tightly hugged her completely by the fragile waist, highly passionately pulling her significantly closer. He intensely looked completely down, directly at his peacefully sleeping biological daughter. Then, completely directly, at the highly small cot, entirely in the highly quiet corner, exactly where Alyssa, highly cozily curled, completely up, completely under a highly soft blanket. I absolutely did not highly carelessly refuse completely from absolutely anything highly important, softly stated Andrew, highly tenderly kissing her perfectly on the beautiful crown entirely of her beautiful head. I violently ran directly to the absolute only highly genuine thing, exactly that highly, truly, genuinely matters. Chloe highly tightly closed her piercing eyes, highly loudly emitting a highly long, violently trembling sigh. Complete to us highly strictly remains entirely to highly seriously sort, completely out entirely in incredibly, highly much, absolutely everything, Andrew. Complete to us absolutely is perfectly on exactly this, the absolute entire highly remaining beautiful life, he replied. I absolutely do not highly politely ask you entirely to completely forget the highly toxic past, Chloe. I highly simply, highly politely ask you entirely to highly generously permit me entirely to highly, miraculously build a highly bright, brand new future. She had tensely looked completely directly at him, completely from highly down, completely up. And the highly sharp fluorescent light, highly beautifully hot, a highly faint, highly hopeful, beautiful smile, highly beautifully, playing perfectly on her highly soft lips. Highly acceptable, she whispered incredibly softly. Let's highly miraculously build. Epilogue. The billionaire's true empire. The highly difficult path completely from the highly cramped, cinnamon-smelling hard walls. Entirely of roasted bean, completely to the highly quiet corridors. Entirely of the highly strict pediatric ward, was highly painfully paved, completely with highly sharp, broken glass, and highly bitter, cruel truth. Andrew Sterling had highly agonizingly learned entirely on his absolute own. Highly bitter experience. Exactly that. A highly prestigious legacy absolutely is not. Highly miraculously built perfectly on highly massive portfolios, entirely of expensive stocks. Highly aggressive, hostile mergers. Or the highly ruthless, toxic eradication entirely of highly pure vulnerability. It highly miraculously is built perfectly on highly fragile, irreplaceable family ties. He had highly cowardly permitted highly toxic deception entirely to completely blind, completely himself. Highly cowardly. Permitting the highly brilliant architects entirely of his highly massive empire entirely to completely, violently destroy his fragile heart. But the entire massive universe, entirely in its highly chaotic, pure mercy, highly generously offered him a highly fragile second chance entirely, in the highly beautiful form entirely of exactly two innocent girls, completely with piercing icy blue eyes. The highly pure forgiveness entirely of Chloe absolutely was not a highly pragmatic deal. It was officially a highly slow, highly conscious act entirely of highly absolute courage. Highly bravely earned, absolutely. Not completely with highly massive wealth, but completely with the highly unwavering, constant presence, entirely of Andrew. Entirely in the highly muddy trenches entirely of highly true, genuine parenthood. In the highly absolute end, the highly powerful billionaire highly miraculously saved his beautiful family. Absolutely. Not highly. Miraculously thanks completely to his highly massive fortune. He highly miraculously saved them, completely by highly miraculously becoming finally exactly a highly true, genuine human being. What an absolutely incredible, breathtaking ending to a highly explosive story. Do you fiercely think Andrew made the absolute right choice by completely dropping a $20 billion deal to run to the hospital? Did he finally earn Chloe's forgiveness? Drop your fierce thoughts in the comments below. We read absolutely every single one. Please don't forget to smash that like button. Share this empowering story of strength with your friends and family, and subscribe to our channel with notifications on so you never miss our next epic, life-changing drama. Thank you for watching, and never stop believing in true redemption. See you in the next one.